Who can take a flower, roll it up and make it fine? Sprinkle it with knowledge and a little bit of time. Cover it with headlines and a sweet euphoria too. Cannabis man, cannabis man can. Who can take a story and make it feel so grand? Spread the word around about the wonders of this land. Mix it all with laughter and a sprinkle of insight. Cannabis man flies. Ooh, cannabis man, spreading news and joy across the land. Diving deep into the growing green. Cannabis man, we're rocking. Ooh, yeah. Ooh, yeah. Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, welcome into another episode of the Cannabis Man podcast. Thank you so much for clicking on the show. I am your host, Don Kleppen, and if it's your first time here, welcome. Thank you for jumping in. This is a show where we're trying to take a journalistic look at all things legal cannabis as it changes state by state in the U.S. and countries around the world. The framework of laws for legal cannabis, this green frontier, is moving all the time. There are news headlines every single day, and maybe you live in a place where for so long it was prohibited, couldn't even get it, anywhere that was legal and on the up and up, and now maybe you're like me where you're just, seeing dispensaries or head shops pop up all across the neighborhood that you're in, and maybe you're interested in giving it a try for the first time. Or maybe you're somebody like myself who's been using it for decades for various reasons, something like helping you get to sleep at night. That was my issue for a long time. Maybe you've got chronic body pain. Maybe you've got one of the many, many medical conditions that would qualify you for to become a medical cannabis patient. There are so many quality of life improvements that the cannabis plant can offer people, and so that is sort of what led me to start this show. I'm a broadcaster in Chicago and a personal cannabis user of nearly 20 years, and I was using long before it became legal, and these are the kind of days that I used to dream about as like an 18, 19-year-old who had just discovered the plant for myself and realized how helpful it was to me, and I wondered if the world would ever catch up to that, and it seems slowly, maybe not as fast as all of us would like, but it does seem slowly that the word is getting around and cannabis is becoming a more accepted part of our day-to-day lives, which is wonderful. I've been doing this podcast for about 2.5 years, and it is now being recognized as one of the top podcasts around the globe, which is amazing. There are millions of podcasts out there for people to listen to, so I cannot express adequately the thanks I have for people tuning into this that you are listening to right now. We are being heard in 85 countries around the world, and it still blows me away to see that and to say that every time. So thank you very, very much. And if you haven't already, this is a great opportunity to leave a rating or review for the show. If you're listening to this on Apple, Spotify, if you're on YouTube right now, be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications, leave a comment, let people know if you're listening to this, someone that you know in your life who might be interested in some of the information we provide here. Tell them about the Cannabis Man podcast. I'd really appreciate it. You can also follow the show on social media. It's the Cannabis Man podcast Facebook page and YouTube channels, and it's at C Man Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. And along with giving you some news stories and perspective about the advancement of legal cannabis, I also have conversations with experts in the space. I do interviews with people who are either business owners, entrepreneurs who have created a product or service in the cannabis space. I like talking with politicians politicians, people who are now in charge of creating the framework or the outright legal laws in cannabis legal zones in neighborhoods and states where it's been legal. These people are building the foundation for what legal cannabis is going to look like in the future, so I like talking with them as well. I also discuss with doctors and researchers, people who are studying cannabis and looking to answer the questions that still exist out there and learn more about the plant than we've ever known before. Very exciting time for a lot of different reasons, and I have one such conversation of that sort to bring to you today. There are two gentlemen who have created a service which is desperately needed, I think, in the cannabis space. It is an app which allows you as the user to kind of input your likes and dislikes, and it creates, through machine learning and AI, it creates a profile for you in terms of what your ideal cannabis products are, and then it can tell you what sort of cannabis products are available near you and where to find them in dispensaries that are nearest you. I'm talking about the app called Hashdash, and I'm speaking today with the co-founders of Hashdash, and I really look forward to bringing you that conversation. Also have plenty of news stories to tell you about, lots to get to in terms of what has changed over the past week since I spoke with you last relating to cannabis. I've also got a product to tell you about. You know, I'm in the middle of that Best in Grass Illinois cannabis competition where I'm judging the edibles, the gummy products that were in this kit, and I've got one to tell you about today. I've also got the news joint wrap with some news stories and events relating to cannabis that have happened and are coming up that you might want to hear about in case you, like I do, love checking out some of these new cannabis events. The vibes at these places are fantastic, and I'm so thrilled that more and more of them are popping up. You're going to want to hear about these. Another thing you may or may not have heard, this is something, I talk about the prohibition of cannabis all the time on the show. It's part of what led me to starting this. I wanted to bring forth some conversations that I've had with other cannabis users in my personal life, at parties, with people also since it's been legal at dispensaries, people who are interested in exploring this for themselves now. These conversations are what I kind of wanted to bring forth into the world because I knew they were out there, but, they weren't really prevalent in mainstream media. So I decided to make this podcast and start bringing them to you myself. But I always talk about the prohibition, about, since 1937, the first drug czar, Henry Anslinger, and J. Edgar Hoover, the initial FBI, they did a lot toward, squashing cannabis and propagandizing the brand, coming up with the term marijuana and all of this. And then the prohibition was furthered. It was sort of, shifted into overdrive, if you will, under the Nixon White House. And President Nixon in the 70s did a lot to further that propaganda against cannabis. And we're still dealing with the fallout from that propaganda today. The stigma against cannabis very much still exists. And, I'm doing my part here trying to chip away at it. But really, as I always talk about, nothing can do more to kill this stigma than people growing up, kids like my daughter Violet, for instance, who are going to grow up in a world where cannabis is on store shelves next to regular products, where adults are using it just like they've done alcohol. That's going to do more to normalize this and destigmatize it than anything I can say here. But, it still feels good to fight the fight, and that's what I'm doing. But the reason I bring up Nixon is because there was some audio unearthed over the last few weeks. You may have seen this, you may have heard of it, maybe not, but I want to play this for you because I think it's important. It illustrates something that I've said on the show from the beginning and that you probably know for yourself already, which is that the prohibition of cannabis was always political. The notion that people were concerned about the well-being of Americans and that's why they squashed it the way they did, that was always bullshit. And there is audio now from then President Nixon talking in his Oval Office in the White House, saying in his words that cannabis is not actually that dangerous and that he doesn't care that much about it one way or the other. This audio reveals the truth of the fact that it was never about a concern for people's health and well-being. It was specifically about the political reasons that Nixon and his White House were after. That was why they kept cannabis where they put it on Schedule 1, and I thought I'd play that audio for you because it is worth hearing. I'll get to that later in the show. So all of that coming up for you and more on this episode of the Cannabis Man Podcast. Hit it!
We'll be right back.
You know, it really is amazing living in a state where cannabis has been legalized, or a country. It's just really cool still to me to be able to go to a dispensary and buy different products. But what's even more amazing than that is growing your own cannabis at home. And if you're able to do that where you are, but maybe the prospect is a little intimidating. Maybe you've never grown anything by yourself before at home. Maybe you don't have the equipment. Maybe you don't even know where to start. Well, if the idea is appealing to you and you've thought about starting a home grow, allow me to recommend my friends at Bloom's Brothers Hydro. These guys are the best. They know exactly how to get you started or how to improve your grow operation. Wherever you are in your journey, they can help you, and they have the products you need to get this done. They've got lines in stock from Horticulture Lighting Group, Nectar for the Gods, Green Grow, Fox Farm, Royal Gold Soils, and more. And hey, maybe growing cannabis is old hat for you at this point. Maybe you've been doing it for a while, you know all you need to know about it, but maybe you've been looking to expand your garden and add a fungal element to it. You know, cannabis flower is great, but it doesn't go great on a pizza, unlike mushrooms. Those are delicious on a pizza. And if you've been interested in researching this prospect, adding some of that fungus to your own home grow, Bloom's Brothers Hydro has you covered there too. They've got supplies from Uncle Mike's, Southwest Shroomery, Redwood Mushroom Supply, and Dr. Mike's as well. You can find Bloom's Brothers Hydro inside the Apple House on Harding Avenue in Terre Haute, Indiana. They're open 7 days a week, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and 11 a.m. to 5 on Sundays. For more information, follow them on Instagram at Apple House Hydro. You can email Fred at theapplehouse.com or call 812-232-1495 to get all the information that you're looking for. Remember, if you're thinking about starting or expanding a home grow, check out the guys at Bloom's Brothers Hydro.
This is Tommy Chong, and you're listening to the Cannabis Broadcast.
And here we are. Thanks again for jumping on. I really love talking cannabis with you, and I love bringing these, bits of information, these news articles, and these conversations with experts to your attention. It's a really exciting time if you're a can enthusiast like myself, or if you're just, canna curious is a term that I've seen thrown around a lot lately for people who, as I said at the beginning, maybe you're not someone who's tried this for yourself. Maybe you were always too nervous because of its prohibited status. I totally understand that. Plenty of people took the word of those in charge, the police, the politicians, these people who were sort of trusted to tell us one way or the other what's good for us, what's bad for us, and make the rules. I understand if you took them at their word when they said cannabis was bad for you, and God knows I was there in those public education classes, those public school DARE sessions with the police officers coming in telling us the dangers of cannabis and all of that. So maybe you're just somebody who, now that it's legal and now that this stuff is moving along as quickly as it is, maybe now for the first time you're interested in finding out more about this. And if that's the case, welcome to one of the greatest communities you'll ever be a part of, because I'm telling you, my favorite people on this whole earth are stoners. They are just the absolute best, and I think you'll find that out for yourself pretty soon. Before I get into the news joint wrap, I wanted to mention, maybe you've heard, if you live here in America or anywhere around the world, you've likely heard about Hurricane Helene at this point. As I sit here recording this on October 3rd. It's killed at least 192 people, causing widespread devastation in the southeast of America, and it's destroyed lots of communities, a lot of people in desperate straits down there, nowhere to go. If they do have their homes, no power, no food, and that's if their, health is still intact, and which for many people it's obviously not. Major disaster declarations been issued, and I just wanted to bring this up because there are a lot of ways that you can help. If you want to volunteer or donate, there are many ways to do it. The American Red Cross is a great place to start. They obviously have their website. You can donate there. Samaritan's Purse, that's a charity run by an evangelist. They're doing a lot of work in North Carolina, as well as the states surrounding that. World Central Kitchen, a charity founded by Chef Jose Andres. It serves tens of thousands of free meals in Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and Tennessee. There's also the Florida Disaster Fund, the North Carolina Disaster Relief Fund, and there's a South Carolina fund in Virginia as well. I have linked a link to this site from CBS News below, which has a helpful list of these places that you can, help out if you so choose. But I thought that was something worth bringing to your attention. I also wanted to tell you, not related to that, but also sort of doing charity work and being part of a cause here. I am going to be climbing for a cause. I'm taking part in November in the Skyrise Chicago Charity Stair Climb, and it supports the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab. Now, if you're in Chicago or anywhere in the world, you can support the incredible organization of Shirley Ryan. They're a global leader in physical medicine and rehabilitation. They provide life-changing care for individuals facing the most severe and complex conditions like traumatic brain and spinal cord injuries, cancer-related impairments, and their work is transforming lives every single day. And I've put a link for anybody who's interested in donating. You could find that on my Facebook page, Don Kleppin, Kleppin, or it's on my LinkedIn and Twitter as well. Same thing, D. Kleppin there. But I've already, raised some money for them, and I'm looking to raise some more. And this Skyrise Chicago, I'm going to be climbing 105 flights of stairs in the, what we still call here in the city, the Sears Tower, what's now known as Willis Tower. But either way, it is going to be really, really tough. I just started doing some stair sets in my building here. We have 25 flights of stairs in the building. I just went up all of those this morning, and this is not going to be easy. I'm well aware of that, but it's certainly for a good cause. And if you want to help out at all, as I've said, there are ways that you can contribute to this cause as well. But yeah, that's what I'll be doing next month, and I hope you can contribute there as well. I want to move on now to the News Joint Wrap. This is a wrap-up of news stories and events curated for you by IllinoisNewsJoint.com. They do great work. Jason Brown does a ton of great news coverage of stories relating to cannabis and highlighting different brands and events that you can, attend yourself, which I've done, and it's wonderful. One of those events last weekend, the Hemp Hops and Shrooms Fest, inclement weather forced them to relocate, from what I understand. But there is another event coming up this weekend, October 5th, and that would be Holding It Down for the Underground, and that is Saturday, as I mentioned, the 5th, running from 6 to 10 p.m. General admission tickets are free. You can reserve them at the article that I've linked below. It is a cannabis consumption event. It's hosted by Legacy Cannabis, and this is the third rendition of Holding It Down for the Underground, something that sounds like a lot of fun, great people to meet there, great vibes as always. A lot of other things highlighted by IllinoisNewsJoint.com this week. A review of coffee creamer infused shake by Nature's Grace and Wellness. Love that brand. Another brand highlighted is Hijinks, and another product reviewed, NF1 by Lobo and Blood Moon Moonrock by Caviar. All of those are waiting for you at IllinoisNewsJoint.com. Moving on, I want to talk to you about the product that I tried this week. On Sunday, leading into this week, I'm moving through that, as I said, Best in Grass cannabis competition, and my kit is the Gummy Edibles kit. Very interesting stuff in there. I've really liked a lot of what I've tried, but I want to talk to you today about the Macro Mango Gummy from the Bettering Company. This is my first time trying anything from the Bettering Company. I've heard good things, and I was excited to try this out. On the back of the package, they describe it as embark on a potent mango journey, perfect for explorers, astronauts, and couch-locked philosophers alike. That's Bettering. And I like that tagline. I like the vibe that they kind of cultivate. They say on the front, gummies are made with real fruit, evenly infused for a dependable experience. And this gummy was a large one, and hefty at that. 50 milligrams of THC, just the one gummy. And so I knew, at least I thought I knew what I was getting into when I tried this. It was definitely a larger gummy than I've tried before, sort of the size of like a small disc, not a CD, but, maybe a quarter of that. Larger than your typical gummies, circular and maybe a quarter or a half of an inch thick. The flavor was nice. I liked the mango flavor. It was subtle. It was not overpowering, and the sweetness dropped off nicely, not really leaving you with any lingering aftertastes. I was into that. But that is about where my enjoyment of this product ended. I will tell you that the texture of it was just okay. It kind of stayed in larger clumps, larger pieces as I was chewing it. And then the feelings. Now, the first half an hour, 40 minutes, not much. I would say probably about 40 minutes in, I started feeling it in my body. That was actually kind of nice. A little bit of a tingle starting from the sternum and lower back like these edibles normally do, and it spread to my entire body, and that's when I knew I was definitely in for a ride. But I'll tell you, about an hour in, that is when my mind just went like sort of completely, I don't want to say blank, but it got into that panicky space that I don't like being in. Started catastrophizing, started thinking about thoughts I didn't really want to have, or being nervous about, things over which we have no control in life. That sort of area is where I got to with this That's Bettering macro mango gummy here. And then I ended up walking into my bedroom, laying down. Thank God my wife Gretchen was, taking care of our daughter Violet. She was sober and she helped walk me through it. That period lasted about an hour, maybe 90 minutes. And then I was able to come back down from that, went back out onto the couch, had some snacks, and Gretchen and I had a fine rest of our evening watching stuff after that. But I just have to say, I'm somebody that I think my tolerance is decent. I use cannabis every day. I can pop 10, 20 milligram gummies, no problem. Sometimes multiples of those, beverages too, and it doesn't really register with me. I will tell you, this was my first time taking a 50 milligram gummy. This was my first time doing a product at this level. So I thought that my tolerance would be enough to handle this, but there's another 50 milligram gummy in the Best in Grass kit. I will try that and tell you how that goes. But for my money, this macro mango from That's Bettering, or the Bettering Company, I should say, I'm not going to be seeking this out again. That was just something that was a little bit too much, more than I was looking for. As I said, thought I was ready for it, and I wasn't. Maybe you're different than me here. Maybe your tolerance is higher. Maybe 50 or 100 is normally what you pop. If you try the Bettering Company's macro mango, 50 milligrams of THC, tell me what you thought about it. Go ahead and text below at the Text Cannabis Man link. I definitely want to hear what you'll say. But for me, it just wasn't what I was looking for, and it's not something I'll be going for again. So that's what I'm going to put in my judging portal of the Best in Grass competition. But again, be curious to hear your thoughts about that. Listener, my guests today, and yes, I am doubling up as I sometimes like to do, they have started a business which I think is going to benefit all of us very, very soon. In the cannabis space, as the legal landscape is changing, I talk about this on the show all the time, various new states are adding themselves to the ranks of U.S. states which have legalized cannabis for adults over 21. Countries around the world like Germany, Uruguay, Thailand as well, or Uruguay, perhaps I said that poorly, but either way, the landscape for legal cannabis is changing all the time, and the measurements that we have for kind of getting new recommendations of products for ourselves, or even a profile of what we all really like as connoisseurs, that's severely lacking for a lot of reasons. The ecosystem that exists for other businesses that have been around for a long time, there have been innovations, there have been developments developments that allow them to recommend new products to their customers and have a system of measurement or rating of various products and whatnot. And cannabis needs that badly. And my guests today have a business called Hash Dash, and you can head to hashdash.com right now to check it out. They are creating a sort of profile, what they term auras, about users. You go on, you fill out a quiz. It takes just a few minutes, and then your profile creates an algorithm, and that algorithm recommends new cannabis products to you based on your likes and dislikes that you reported in the past and how you answered that quiz. And here to talk about this platform, as well as their reasons behind getting it and how you can get started today, are Scott Lynch and Jordan Martin, co-founders of Hash Dash. Welcome, guys. Thanks for joining the show.
Thanks for having us, Don.
Thanks for having us.
So, Scott, you can go first and then you after Jordan, but tell us a little about how you got into the cannabis space. Scott, you had a cannabis company before this one, right?
That first company, I was the second employee, became part owner in the business. We opened up a 10,000 square foot grow in Denver, Colorado. And the main objective purpose of that was to, like I said, understand what cannabis needed, because just like the human body, cannabis plants require different strains, require different inputs. And so we came out and we developed fertilizer specifically for cannabis. So as part of that endeavor, that journey over the decade, I spent a significant portion of it going around to a bunch of different cultivation facilities. I was up in Organogram up in Canada, the world's largest producer of cannabis, to Humboldt County with the farmers that have been growing longer than I've been alive, down to Trulieve in Florida, down to Perch in Puerto Rico. And so I got a really interesting range of experience from your mom and pop 1,000, 2,000 square foot cultivator, caregiver, all the way to your mid-tier single state operator, to your multi-state operator, these guys that are producing in over 300,000, 500,000 square feet of canopy. And it was very interesting, the amount of trial and error that was happening on the back end of the industry. I realized that a lot of cultivators were relying on anecdotal information. And that's nothing against the cultivators, and kind of, if we get down to brass tacks, that's kind of life, right? We try something, it works, we double down, it doesn't, we pivot. But I thought to myself, wow, if that's the reliance on anecdotal data, I can only imagine the consumer. And myself being a consumer since junior year in high school, I relied on anecdotal data. And what I mean by anecdotal data is what my friends told me, what a colleague told me worked for them.
Yeah.
And I thought there's got to be a better way. You know, cannabis has so much opportunity in it, from mental health to physical health to just clarity, perspective, to pain management, you name it. People should have a better experience. And then we came upon a study by YouGov that mentioned something like 54, 57% of cannabis consumers have a bad experience with cannabis. Yeah. Heightened anxiety, paranoia, dry mouth, dry eyes, etc. So we thought there's got to be a better way to help the consumer have a better experience with cannabis so they ultimately have a better outcome with those products. And what we realized is we needed to provide education, we needed to provide data, and that was really the impetus and start for me, one, how I got in the industry, and two, where Hash Dash started to become alive.
Yeah, so I come from a very different background than Scott, which I think is great, and part of the reason why Hash Dash has been just such a enlightening product, right? I come from more of a product development and product growth background, right? So when Scott initially came to me with the idea and providing me with pretty much the exact same problem that he just provided you with, I thought there's a lot of solutions that I've seen in my time doing product development, working on growth for products that can be applied to this space that, just to be quite frank, is not currently in this space.
Right.
I think that there's a lot of, antiquated solutions for users who want a better experience. And I think we've done a really good job of providing them the resource to get that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that you guys both brought up, good points in there. And I think the key thing is that the antiquation of our systems of evaluating cannabis, a lot of that has to do with the prohibition. Some other systems that have benefited from, 100 years at this point of their industry, and then companies innovating and coming up with better systems and then rolling those systems out to consumers, whether, or salespeople, whether to kind of measure just where people stand on a market for whatever industry. Many others have such an advantage over cannabis here. And there does need to be a better way to do this, as you guys described. And that's where I think, your idea for Hash Dash is a great one, because all of us, the OGs, I guess, anybody who's been in the space since before it was legal or cool. Scott, I'm like you. It was right in junior year of high school that my friends introduced me to it. And I really got into it afterward. And I found that it was beneficial to me, but that's where once you decide to make cannabis a regular part of your life, then you're just kind of out there engaging in trial and error experiments over and over and over again. And then, before it was legal, you didn't even have a way to always recreate. If you found a strain you loved, there was no guarantee that you were going to get that again if your plug ran out, and then they just get whatever is available, and you've got to go, okay, maybe you're lucky enough to have a guy with multiple options, but most of us just took what we could get. And now we live in this world where all these products have been created, these businesses have these products on their shelves, and there is a need for a system that people can record their preferences and have something, a system, an algorithm like you guys have, that can then look through the whole world of products that are out there and tell people what they might like based on their recommendations or the things that they've reported that they liked earlier.
Yeah. And I think too, to Jordan's point, and Don, also your point, there has been an almost hesitation to adopt technology into this space. I've seen it on the back end of the industry and also the front end. And what's so amazing is that in more recent years, I would say the last 3 or 4, even 5 years, this industry has been more open to it. And I think there's this interesting clash, metaphorically speaking, between the old way of doing things and the new way of doing things, or adopting, right? This industry continues to mature every single day, and we're still such in its infancy.
Right.
But if we want greater adoption, if we want to break stigmas, if we want more and more people to be open to this idea that cannabis has thousands of clinical studies behind it, that it can transform your life, then it means we need to create systems, operations, tech stacks that allow a more simplistic approach rather than one that's very intimidating. Because most people are very intimidated by cannabis. It's why they hesitate walking into the dispensary. They don't know what to ask when they get into the dispensary. They feel self-conscious. They don't know where to start. They don't even know how to navigate it. And so part of the value of our platform is shortening that trial and error, that timeline to a greater outcome, but 2, weaponizing, if you will, education so that you feel more empowered as a consumer, and it's about purposeful consumption.
Yeah, I think another thing that was very important to us in the process of this was not only catering to people who consume and enjoy cannabis regularly already, but also looking at the canna curious, right? The people who are they want to get in. Maybe they're your parents, maybe they're your grandparents who now they're dealing with some things later in life that they're not sure what the right solution is. They want to break into the market. They want to be part of this. They don't really know how, and there's a lot of intimidation for people who they don't know a lot about it. They don't know how to, go to the counter at the store and ask questions like, what kind of questions do I even ask? How much of my medical history do I want to provide to this person that I just met? We give them the opportunity to go onto the website and find some strains that might match them and help what they're trying to alleviate.
Totally. Great stuff from you guys. Because what you're talking about, we share the same mission, because that is really what led me to kind of starting this show a few years ago when cannabis became legal in Illinois back in 2020. Even though it had long been a part of my life at the time, there were so many people in my life who I knew could benefit from it as well, but who were not, who were too scared or just too uncomfortable with its legal status, which is to say, prohibited and whatnot. They were too uncomfortable with all of that to even entertain the idea of exploration. And it was really that I started this show for them. And thankfully, in the years since, I have gotten, questions. I've been reached out to the very people who I was hoping to help with this, and these conversations with people like you guys, with others in the space, and others who just simply went on a journey of maybe exploration, whether it was before it was legal or afterward. But these people who finally, for whatever reason, gave cannabis a try and found that it improved their lives in a significant way. It took away a quality of life issue that was negatively affecting them. That is really what needs to be spread more out. That's the sort of rebranding that cannabis kind of needs. And that's why a platform like Hashdash, I think, is going to be so effective, because you're giving people a place to go that's accessible, and you're building this system of measurement and of recommendation for everybody to get their own kind of compass that can point them in the direction of new cannabis products that they would be interested in but never have before. Something that I liken this to just now, really, as I'm thinking about the prospect. It makes me think of how Spotify's algorithm shows me new music that otherwise I never would have known about, but I've loved it for so many years because its algorithm knows what I like, and Netflix is kind of supposed to function this way too, but it's supposed to be, they know who you are. The more that you show them in terms of what you're selecting, how long you listen to it, they're creating a picture of you, and then they can recommend to you music that's based on the data you've already given them. And giving cannabis this same informed recommendation power, I think it's going to go a long way toward normalizing this and getting people to try new things that maybe they were looking for, but as you guys have both just said, that they didn't know how to ask for, that maybe they didn't feel comfortable asking for, but that they know they need something to solve, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Spot on.
I love that you brought up Spotify and Netflix. That's fantastic. We've talked so much about those internally. I know Scott's chuckling over there because, it's been a very big focus of, if they can do it, why can't we, right? How do we do it similar? How do we do it better in a lot of ways as well? And in a very sometimes convoluted industry. Let Scott speak more to it, but I love that you brought those two examples up because we talk about it constantly.
We obsessed over both of those platforms in the ideation phase of this, right? Like, how do we create an experience similar to Spotify or Netflix for cannabis? And of course, music and entertainment, movies, shows, podcasts, and so forth are way different than cannabis. And cannabis is way more complex. Why we're in this position as an industry in the first place. But those platforms have made it easy. And so therefore they have increased adoption with their platform. Maybe people who weren't interested in audiobooks or podcasts now are, because they took the complexity out of it and they made it accessible. And that is the core reason why our platform is free. We wanted to ensure, irrelevant of who you are, where you live, your economic status, that you had the ability to have a better experience with cannabis and therefore a better experience with life. So we think about our platform as a cannabis discovery tool, but it's also about purposeful cannabis consumption. Because one of the things we hear all the time at the dispensaries, most consumers walk in and say, I am looking for a strain that's your highest THC, your lowest price point. And I crumble inside. I crush like a can under pressure because I think that's like walking into the liquor store and saying, I want your highest proof alcohol and walking out. I can tell you right now, you're going to have a bad experience.
Yeah.
And cannabis is so diverse between the terpene profile, cannabinoid profile, flavonoids, you name it. And so it's about, okay, if it's that complex and that diverse, then what are the most important pieces that I should be looking for in regards to the symptoms, the effects that I'm going for, the flavors that I would like, the condition that I'm trying to address. And so we've taken all of that and simplified that process. And for consumer, it's fairly simple. You go to hashdash.com and you fill out a quiz. It's 5 to 7 minutes, depending your level of education on cannabis. And then we are able to provide you with your cannabis aura. So we think of this as your unique fingerprint. That is your identifier that in a simplistic world, we overlay with each of our strain auras, which gives the consumer the match percentage to those strains. Again, a watered down explanation, but nonetheless, that's the basics of the platform. And your hash stash is your Netflix or Spotify homepage. And the more that you interact with our platform, the better we are able to understand your needs as a consumer, and therefore the better outcomes that you are going to get with our platform and with those particular strains.
Right. So we use data points not only from the strains themselves and you as a consumer, but we also then consider how you've interacted with other strains. So if you're telling us that you have had a very good interaction with one particular strain, we will start looking at all of the strains like it and start making you a better match with those as well, because they're very similar in what their effects would be.
I love it. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and it's a cool, as I said, innovation in this space, which can clearly use it. And so I think that, there's got to be people listening who just think, that this is something that they can use. And, again, listener, if you want to head to hashdash.com and you can take this quiz for yourself. I notice it does say on the website that you guys are still in beta. Is the site live or is it fully launched? Or is it fully accessible as it is, or is there sort of a future launch plan?
It's fully accessible. So the beta version, we have it up there because we're still working out a lot of kinks with it. For sure. We're making sure everything works the way we'd like it to. Not so much the algorithm. We feel very confident in that. We're waiting till we're very confident in what it is to release to get rid of the beta tag and to do a little bit more of a push from a marketing standpoint. But I mean, we've been hyper obsessed with how the user is going to interact with our platform. And before we start, bringing this thing to market and trying to get as many people as possible on it, we want to be really confident in what users are going to get out of it. So I think there's just a little bit of patience that we've had that, maybe some other people wouldn't have had in an effort to make this as user-friendly as possible.
And we also have, just to add, we have about 177 different features we want to add to this platform. So this right now is the basis of everything. It's the foundation. But to Jordan's point, we obsessed about the small details because we know how important of a mission this is, and we want to get it right. And there are some things we're going to get wrong. That's just business and life in general. But I think the ensuring that we're slowing down is important in the micro moments. And additionally, you can be certain that there's going to be a lot more features on the platform. So there are a lot of things you can already do right now, favoriting cultivars, comparing cultivars to the core data points, to writing reviews, to interacting with other consumers and connecting with other consumers, to searching the database either via a collection like Flavors Effects or just using our algorithm. But that is really the foundation of everything. We have a lot of exciting features and things in store ahead.
That's very cool. And I love the idea. I love how the philosophy there, you guys both mentioned you're being careful because you want to get it right before you kind of open the gates fully and let, everybody in here, which I think that in today's day and age, anybody who plays video games is probably familiar with, launches that should have really been delayed, AAA titles that get out to market and they're really not full games that you would deem worth the full price until a year later when they they've patched it back to something that you were really expecting based on the trailer. And so I tie that back to what you guys are doing here, and I think that is going to be appreciated by people in the long run. But as you said, there's plenty that they can do right now in terms of liking stuff and starting their algorithm off, getting your aura pieced together so that, you know, you can kind of hit the ground running when all the features are live and such. Are these going to point people to products that are in their states? Is there like location data, or, you know, based on what's in dispensaries, or is it more kind of a general strain recommendation thing?
It's a great question. It's a very good question. So that is currently the phase that we are entering right now, is the product and dispensary connectivity tissue, if you will. So we had to start somewhere. And so we prioritized the strain aspect of the platform. The API and the connectivity to the dispensary POS systems is one that is very complex, that some other companies still haven't really got down. And so we wanted to focus on the strain aspect first, because that's really the basis. Get to understand the different strains out there, terpenes, cannabinoid profiles, effects, symptoms, etc., and understand you as a consumer and educate yourself through our platform. And then in the midst of that, we will be introducing dispensary and dispensary pages along with product pages. So it's the next kind of cog in things. Great. I know these strains work well for me. I've consumed them too as well. And so I know they fit my goals. Now, where can I get them in relation to my location?
For sure. Our ideal user journey is one where the user comes to our website, fills out the quiz, finds a bunch of incredible recommendations that they can't wait to try, right? They start visiting these strain pages for the recommendations. They start doing some research, and right there on the page, they can find the closest location to them where they can get it. That's our ideal journey. And, you know, really it helps the user, it you know, get to where they want to get to faster. People who are maybe a little afraid to go into the dispensary right off the bat, you know, they can arm themselves with the data before they get in there. They can know what they're asking for. They can know, you know, where they can find it. Are there multiple places they can find it? Maybe compare price points on our website. All those kind of things is what we like to be able to provide.
That makes a lot of sense to me, and especially given that the location stuff is still changing so rapidly. You know, the patchwork state by state here in the States, and then, you know, countries outside of the U.S. that are doing this. That's very much still touch and go. Hopefully, you know, we're recording this in September. Hopefully the administrative hearing that the DEA has scheduled will lead to a rescheduling maybe next year in 25, and that may open up some more location opportunities for people. But either way, I think it's a smart point from you guys and both of you saying to get the journey right up front and basically kind of start piecing together your likes, your dislikes, get that algorithm familiar with what it is that you know, what you're into, and then you can add the location part later on down the road when things are a little more settled. Makes a lot of sense to me. One more question for you guys. We've talked a lot about flower, and I definitely see a lot of that on the website, but I'm curious, is Hashdash also going to be making recommendations for edibles like gummies and beverages, concentrates, that sort of thing?
Yes. Yep. We will have all of that. So if it's going to be on a dispensary menu, our algorithm will be able to match you to those specific products. So I think part of the idea too here for us is that there is a lot of information that we're learning through the experience of building this platform, but more so the algorithm. Once we get that connectivity to the POS side and the product side, that algorithm will be able to be transferred, if you will, metaphorically speaking, to specific products. So whether it be an edible, whether it be a concentrate product, whether it be a cannabis seltzer, all of those things we will be able to match the consumer to.
Yeah, makes good sense. And, you know, it's very exciting. And for a lot of the reasons we've brought up, and also, you know, others, that's just ultimately getting at the fact that we're still so early in this new frontier of legalizing cannabis, of getting us to a place where it's normalized at the level of, some of the other pieces to our society, substances we lean on like caffeine, sugar, alcohol, you name it. They're a much larger part of what we do. And so there are systems in place, not just laws, but, a market that's established, businesses that know how to reach their consumers, how to measure, what people like, how to meet them where their desires are for new products. Those ecosystems are well established. And that's not the case with cannabis, but it's happening right now. Early on, this foundation is still being laid here. And it seems like Hash Dash is really a key piece to kind of giving people a service that exists in other industries that they can really use in this new green frontier, as I like to call it.
I also think, and Jordan can elaborate here too, just back to the point, I want to make sure we hit this, that of moving slow. I think there's always this need for speed, if you will.
Sure.
And I think what's been very important is that we understand that we are coming out of the woods. And so there's a lack of trust and credibility with anything that's new, whether it be technology, a new business, new service, new product, so forth. And so as one of the ways that I think moving slow helps is to ensure that you're crossing your T's and dotting your I's, but it's allowed us to put a science advisory board together too as well. So we've actually partnered with 3 different doctors to ensure that all of the guides that we have on our platform are reviewed by each of those doctors to ensure that we're not pushing false information out there. And as we continue to iterate on our algorithm, we will continue to include our science advisory board to ensure that we're always leaning into science and ensuring that we're not reverting back to this anecdotal world that we live in. And I think part of that slow process will be ensuring that we're not dropping any of these crumbs, and 2, that we want to be as transparent as possible. I mean, there's tooltips all across our platform so you can see how we came up with certain data, because trust is important to us and we don't want to take the short roads. I always like saying shortcuts lead to short success. And this is about empowering the consumer and the people. And so we've put a lot of effort into that trust and credibility aspect, which is just really important to us. Yeah.
And just in terms of doing the right thing and kind of building our platform for users. We've been to trade shows and we've talked to brands, and I think brands are pretty used to the pay for play scenario of a lot of the other people in our niche at the moment.
Yeah.
And we get the questions like, well, how much would it cost to be presented first? And it's like, well, I mean, you have to have the better reviews. We are going to align people similar to how Google does, right? When we give recommendations to people, because we want to provide the best options for users, not just the best options for our wallet, right? We don't have a board of directors to make happy. We don't have a bunch of stocks to make happy. We are very much working for the user at the moment. We've gotten feedback from dispensary owners that we're focusing on the user too much, and I think that's a good thing right now. Again, I'm very much in the product development space, and I enjoy building things that people. I think that if we were to spend all of our time worrying about making money right now, people would not enjoy our platform as much.
No, it's well said, and I think that is the right idea. You guys are clearly coming at this from the right place, and I think that philosophy will carry you far, and I'm sure that if you haven't already, listener, again, check out hashdash.com. Take the quiz for yourself, start getting your algorithm warmed up here, and see what the recommendations come your way. Scott, if I can, and if you don't mind, Jordan, I know, Scott, you have another podcast, The Motivated Mind. You want to tell us a little about what that's about?
Sure, absolutely. I appreciate the ask and the plug. So I've had this podcast, The Motivated Mind, since October of 2018. And the impetus behind it was to really help those through their mental health journey. So back in 2015, I had my best friend take his own life. And I spent about 2.5 years really fumbling over that experience, blaming myself for the situation. Why did I not see his pain? How come I didn't support him more? And I really played the victim in that scenario. And I realized through 2.5 years of therapy, through this discovery journey, was that I had an opportunity to help those that were struggling on their mental health journey. And so that was the start of the podcast. It's become a top 100 mental health podcast on Spotify. We're almost at 6 million downloads. And I really just want to help people. I want to help those that are struggling. That's what actually led me ultimately at the very, very beginning to cannabis. It's all about just adding value and helping people. Life is complex. It's difficult. It's challenging. It's not easy. But if you focus on the right things and you understand what your superpowers are and your purpose, your passions are, life can be a magnificent thing. No matter what the news tells you, what the radio says, any of those other things, there's a lot of good in the world. There's a lot of good in each individual. And so the podcast is really about helping elevate people in their lives to find their passion and purpose and go after it every single day and live, because the odds that we are even born on this planet are astronomically difficult to understand. And so we've got one opportunity to do this, and that's the pod.
I love it, man. Yeah, it's a great message and a crucial one because, yeah, I mean, I know you and I talked a little before, getting on this interview and stuff, and it's just that I feel similar to you. I do think that all of us, it's hard to maintain gratitude every day. I get why, people, we just get in the thick of it. Bills got to be paid. News isn't always great. So it's not always easy to keep the smile up, and I do get that. But at the end of the day, when you kind of pull back and look at your life from 30,000 feet or whatever, that perspective of we were born and by being born, we won the lottery. We're here in the game, in whatever this is, we're here on the stage able to have an effect on it. And the opportunities that come just in moments, across every day, every month, every year. It is a blessing to have. And even though that's not always an easy perspective to maintain, I do think that, trying to maintain it is just good and healthier. And it's going to maybe put you in a better mental place to just sort of have some of that appreciation and humility, considering those that have gone, considering those that are no longer around and don't have the opportunities to kind of make their life of it what they will, the way that we still do. And cannabis can be a major helpful tool on that, road. It certainly has been for me. I know it has been for both you and Scott and Jordan. And it's a key. It can be a really key, ally in the fight to maintain a good perspective, to feel better about whatever it is you got going on, anxiety, stress, chronic pain, sleep issues, whatever your issue is, there's a chance that some strain of cannabis can help you, some product can help you. And as this legal cannabis landscape is changing all the time, hash-dash.com is a place that is endeavoring to kind of help all of us create a better compass to point us in the direction of cannabis products that we want to have in our lives that kind of help us, as we said, deal with those quality of life issues and not have the bad experiences that so many people have unfortunately had up to now. Maybe those will be a thing of the past in the future. Co-founders of Hash Dash, Scott Lynch and Jordan Martin, thank you both for stopping by today. Great conversation.
Thanks for having us, Don.
Thanks for having us. Very excited to see you on the platform, Don.
And there you have it, listener. Just want to thank my guests one more time, co-founders of Hash Dash, Scott and Jordan. Really great talking with those guys. Like I said at the beginning, I think that this is a necessary area of need in the cannabis space. It's a vacuum. It's something that can help a lot of us out, especially people who are not that familiar with their cannabis preferences yet. Maybe they're just starting to form these things. This kind of thing, machine learning, a little AI system to create a profile based on what you tell it, and then it can tell you specifically what products are going to vibe with what you choose to, consume, with what you like and where you want to be. I think that sort of thing is really needed right now, and I love what these guys are doing. So check out Hash Dash if you haven't already at that link below in the description notes. And as I said, listener, I'm going to walk you through this Hashdash setup. I'm setting my account up right now. I went to hashdash.com, entered in my email, created a username and password, and now I am getting started on this quiz that Scott and Jordan were telling us about. As they mentioned, you tell them about yourself. They'll create your unique cannabis aura and highlight how it reflects you, the user, and then based on that unique aura and preferences, they'll find and filter cultivars that match my preferences. First question, 1 of 18. How would I define myself as a cannabis consumer? Beginner, intermediate, or expert? I'm going to go with intermediate just because I always feel a little intimidated by declaring expert status, but intermediate sounds just right. What gender do I identify with? That would be male. What are my feelings on cannabis use? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 being poor, 5 being excellent. Well, that's a layup. I'm going to say excellent. How do you usually consume cannabis? No wrong answers. Choose as many as you want. Concentrates, topicals, beverages, edibles, and flour. I'm going to go with all of these, actually, which you are allowed to do. When do you usually consume cannabis? I'm going to go ahead and select all these as well. Oh, I can't. Morning, afternoon, or evening. Well, if I have to choose one, I'll say evening, because that's definitely what I do. Am I a medical or recreational consumer? As I say all the time, listener, I feel like the lines get a little blurred here between medical and rec users, but I do have my medical card here in Illinois, so I will claim that status. How often do I consume cannabis? Daily, 1 to 3 times a week, 1 to 3 times a month. Not often. Used to, but it's been some time, or never. Daily. That is me right there. We've got you, they say. Now let's talk about my cannabis preferences. This is the 8th question of 18. What are the top effects you look for when purchasing cannabis products? You know how you want to feel. Choose as many as you want. If this is not a priority for you as a consumer, please skip it. Lot of options here. They include relaxed, happy, euphoric, focused, sleepy, creative, giggly, energetic, talkative, tingly, hungry, aroused. I'm going to go with relaxed, happy, euphoric, uplifted, creative, energetic, tingly. I'm going to go ahead and select all of these as well. Might not help my aura, but it's true. I enjoy all of those feelings from cannabis. What negative effects do you most want to avoid? This is a great question. I love this. Anxious, dizzy, dry eyes, dry mouth, headache, paranoid. For me, as I've talked about on this very episode, actually, using that one gummy that I tried, anxious is sort of how I've been feeling lately. Certainly want to avoid a headache as well. Paranoid kind of falls in line with anxious. This allows you to select 2 options, so I'm going with anxious and headache is really what I'm trying to avoid here. Question 10, are you looking to alleviate any of the following symptoms? Cramps, eye pressure, fatigue, headaches, inflammation, insomnia, lack of appetite, muscle spasms, nausea, pain, seizures, spasticity, or stress? Let's go with insomnia for me and stress. You can choose as many as you want, so I'll also go with headaches, and I'll also go with pain as well, and nausea. All 5 of those. I chose headaches, insomnia, nausea, pain, and stress. All 5 of those apply, I think, to conditions I try and avoid by using cannabis. Are there any conditions you are looking to address? There are a lot of options here, and it says if this is not a priority for you as a consumer, please skip it. To give you an idea, there's ADHD here, there's depression, there's epilepsy, muscular dystrophy, Parkinson's, Tourette's. Alcoholism is also on here. I'm actually going to select ADHD just to have something selected on this screen, and that is something that never been diagnosed, but I do feel that it does apply to me. Cannabis really does help me focus a lot of the time, depending on the strain, so that's the only one I'm going to select. But next question is calm versus energized. What's your go-to mood? If this isn't a priority for you, skip it. There are 5 options. The first one is woohoo, hyper, balanced, chill, and then drool. These are pretty hilarious. I'm going to go with hyper, and you can select only one. So I am actually going to go with I'm I'm going to go with hyper because I do lean towards sativas. What terpenes do you prefer is the next question. We don't like to be limited to one option either. Choose as many as you want. If this is not a priority, you can skip the question. Citrus, herbal, spice, myrcene. I love that. Limonene, as you may know if you've listened to the show before, limonene is one of my top terpenes. Linalool, also very popular. Caryophyllene, I like those. Humulene, I'm not as familiar with it, but it describes it as hops, woody, and sharp. There's also alpha-pinene for pine, sharp, and sweet. And then there's a few of others here that I have not actually heard of. Eucalyptol, alpha-bisabolol, beta-pinene, terpeneol, valencine, and geraniol. A lot of these I have not heard of, so I'm not selecting any of those, but I got my myrcene, limonene, alpha-pinene, linalool, caryophyllene, and humulene on here, which I like. And then which flavors do you prefer? A lot of options here, as you can probably imagine, and they say you can select any as you want. You can also skip it. So I am looking through these options. I like berry, blueberry included. Those are separate. I also enjoy citrus. Coffee is another one that I enjoy. Earthy and flowery, those are fun. Lavender, I like that. Always love lemon and lime. There's menthol and mint. I'm not selecting those. Nutty, orange, peach, pear. I am a fan of pear. I'll put that in there. Pineapple, always. I'll try that. Pungent, rose, sage, skunk, spicy herbal, strawberry, sweet tar, tea, tobacco, tree fruit, and tropical. I will select tropical as well. So I selected a bunch, and you can imagine you go ahead and do the same thing for yourself. Perfect, almost there. Let's get to the nitty-gritty now. And then looks like there's 3 left here. Which do you prefer when evaluating a cannabis product? THC dominant, CBD dominant, balanced, or I'm not sure. I myself would go with balanced for this question. What types of cannabinoids are you interested in using? If this isn't a priority, you can skip it as a consumer. They have several cannabinoids here: THC, THCA, CBD, CBN, CBG, THCV. Lots of options to choose from. I'm going with THC, CBD, THCV because I've recently become a fan of that, CBN and CBG. Those are the only ones with which I have any familiarity, so I'm using those. And then, what level of THC do you prefer? I myself, this is actually a great question because I've been kind of wrestling with this question myself recently. When I went into the dispensary over the weekend, my wife and I took Violet to her first Cubs game last Saturday. It was a really meaningful moment for me. As I mentioned on last week's episode, my grandma, Helen Lyon, passed away. She was an ardent Cubs supporter, and I was able to get some tickets to the Cubs. It was their second to last game of the year. Kyle Hendricks' last game, likely as a starter for them. He played a great game, pitched very well, and we were able to get in there. We got Violet her first-time certificate. We got amazing seats, thanks to my friend Greg Broderick, who I found out now works for the team. He's an engineer, so he was able to get us some amazing seats. And the reason I bring this up, though, is because in Wrigleyville, before my wife and daughter got there, I went over to the Sunnyside Dispensary, which is something I do. And after I got off work, I went to the bud tender and I asked her, listen, do you guys have any what I would describe as dad weed? And what I meant by that was I told her, I'm looking for low THC, and maybe if you have any CBD ratios in there, I would like a 2-to-1 CBD to THC. Now, they didn't have any CBD flower. She informed me of that. But this question, low, medium, or high levels of THC, low being 1 to 15%, medium being 15 to 20%, and high being over 20%. And for the record, when I was at Sunnyside, pretty much everything they showed me was over 20%. Kind of gives you an idea of the percentage of THC products at a lot of mainstream dispensaries. I myself, I'm going to select medium here because that I feel like is kind of the level that I'm looking for. And the final question is, why are you interested in Hash Dash? We don't like to be limited to one option either. Choose as many as you want. There are a few here. Left to right, I will read it. Just curious, education, looking for new cultivars, want to see which cultivars I pair with, and then want to see my unique #aura. Other is the final option there. I am going to say looking for new cultivars, and I'm also going to say which ones I would pair with and what my unique #aura is. And then I click next, and that's it. Now it says, like quality cannabis takes time to grow, we are growing your aura. And then it moves on, engaging the munchies mode, loading your hash stash. And so now I'm here on my account page, and it has created a #aura for me. My username on here is Don Kleppin, my name, Kleppin. And now, this is really fascinating. The aura has popped up. There is a little paragraph here. I'm sure this is, written by their AI program, but an intermediate enthusiast. Looks like a few knowledge bowls might be getting packed. Relaxation is one click away. We are here for it. Don't worry, you're in good company as a seeker of happiness. Each session will be like stumbling upon a hidden stash of joy. Welcome to the green side. And then they give me best matches. I scroll on down, and it says, get better recommendations the more you interact, which is exactly like what we were talking about with Scott and Jordan in that interview. They say the more I interact with this, the better the recommendations will become. But right off the bat here, I have some recommendations of a hybrid strain caramel Kona coffee cookies, California limes, which is listed as a sativa, pineapple hash plant, a hybrid, Lotus Larry, another hybrid. And then there are in other categories, top reported cultivars that may help you feel relaxed. Modified grapes, gold leaf, ultimate purple. Some other ones that make me feel happy, banana cream cake, pineapple sherbet, Lennon. And then helping you feel euphoric, PVCOG, Marionberry pie, and Daywalker. And then reported cultivars that may help you feel uplifted, blueberry clementine, guava dub star, the big dirty, and gorilla bomb. And so I can continue to scroll down here, and there are tons of recommendations. And so that is just a walkthrough of how easy it was to set up the # profile. I am now on here. My account is live. You can find me on here. And I am really excited to interact with my #aura and kind of continue to customize this algorithm the way we were talking about, just like you do on Spotify or Netflix. The more that you use this thing, this is going to give me better recommendations as I move forward. And I really look forward to trying some of these things. There are strains here being recommended that I've never even heard of before, and I would definitely be willing to try them next time I'm out and I see them at a dispensary. Now for some national news stories. I wanted to bring up one. I mentioned the Nixon audio, which I'll play here in a moment, but before I do, there's an article that was published yesterday, October 2nd, from Marijuana Moment. I like this publication. I like what they do. Arizona court says cannabis users must actually be impaired to be punished for DUI. I loved this news. I love the headline, and I couldn't wait to bring it to you. This reinforces our understanding of voters' intent expressed through their enactment of Proposition 207 that unimpaired driving after consuming cannabis cannot be penalized. End quote. That is how the article starts from Jim Small of the Arizona Mirror, which is what Marijuana Moment has published here. The state cannot suspend someone's driver's license because they have THC in their bloodstream unless they are actually impaired while behind the wheel. This is according to the Arizona Court of Appeals. They made that ruling upholding a provision in a marijuana legalization law that voters passed back in 2020. Aaron Kirsten was pulled over for speeding in Sedona in October 2 years ago, and the police officer saw he had bloodshot eyes, slurred speech, and was unsteady on his feet. Kirsten refused a field sobriety test, which, by the way, I encourage anybody to do. If you're ever pulled over, refuse those tests. But when he did a breathalyzer test, which you shouldn't also do, don't blow, he blew a .083, slightly above the legal limit. He was arrested because of that. While in custody, Kirsten consented to a blood draw, but the Department of Public Safety's analysis showed his blood alcohol content was just .063, less than the .08 maximum BAC allowed under state law. But DPS also tested Kirsten's blood for drugs and found he had THC metabolites. As a result, the Arizona Department of Transportation suspended his license for 90 days, citing a state law barring driving if THC metabolites are present. At an administrative appeal, Kirsten testified he had not consumed THC in the 24 hours prior to his arrest, and any effects from the THC he'd consumed had long ago passed. A family member who is a nurse and chiropractor also testified on Kirsten's behalf, telling the administrative law judge that THC metabolites, the compounds which form as the body breaks down a substance, can stay in the blood for weeks after consumption. Most of us stoners know that. If you don't already know that, THC is lipid soluble. It bonds to your body's fat cells. It can stay in your system for up to 11 weeks, and some people say even longer than that. For what it's worth, the administrative law judge said it was irrelevant, that's a quote, whether Kirsten had smoked marijuana within 24 hours of his arrest, siding with the Department of Transportation, ruling the agency did not need to prove he was impaired by THC to suspend his license for using it previously. Kirsten appealed the ruling to the Maricopa County Superior Court, which upheld the administrative judge's reasoning. But the appellate court said both got it wrong and effectively ignored voter-created laws that bars the state from punishing drivers who have legally used marijuana products but are not impaired while driving. That is all the article I'm going to read. There is plenty more here. I've linked it below, as I always do. Scroll on down and find out more for yourself. But the huge news here is that the Arizona court said cannabis users must actually be impaired to be punished for a DUI. And I love the precedent that this sets. This is something that, as I've said, I've talked with guests on the show before, our technology to measure current impairment levels from THC needs to be improved, but there are people working on that. In the meantime, the way that we've measured for alcohol, the way that people say, oh, well, you've consumed X amount of time ago, so you must be impaired. That is not how cannabis works. That is not how any of us, anyone who's used this before, especially if you're a regular user like myself, you understand that your consumption level is not necessarily coinciding with your impairment level. It's not the same thing. And the more that you use it, the less impaired you really get. I've talked with plenty of people who have been daily users who say they haven't been impaired properly in years. And that's just kind of a fact of cannabis use. So that's something that I thought was worth bringing to your attention. And then finally, here is the audio that I talked about at the beginning of this episode. Richard Nixon openly admitting in his Oval Office while sitting in the White House as President of the United States, even though he was very much anti-cannabis in his public comments, and even though he did a lot to continue the prohibition, this is President Nixon commenting about cannabis and saying it's not particularly dangerous, which runs contrast to his image as a drug warrior, in quotes.
But with marijuana, I think we ought to say something about soft judges. We ought to say something about permissive parole officers, et cetera, et cetera. In other words, we should have rehabilitation, but on the other hand, it's got to be firmness on the one hand and compassion when it's deserved. We can't just have compassion for the criminal, which means risking the lives and the property of the innocent.
With marijuana, I'm not sure how I would guess that 4 years from now, we may see legalization.
Sure.
But if we do, somebody should run for office on it.
That's right. Present time, let me say, I know nothing about marijuana. I know that it's not particularly dangerous and all the rest. I know most of the kids that are legalizing it. But on the other hand, it's the wrong signal this time. That's my point of view. You can't give the signal that, well, kids, because it's John who used the term on this, what he once said. It's crossing the threshold. What did you say, John?
Well, there's a boundary line. In the drug culture and the non-drug culture.
And either you cross it, you use the better term, cross the boundary.
What's a frontier is what I was
Thinking back to our center, that's great. But you see, once you cross it, then you go to something else. Now, I know all the arguments. Well, alcohol is bad. It is. Nobody should drink. But they're not drink. And maybe a lot of other things are bad. Maybe cigarette smoking is bad. I mean, many things give you maybe a Coca-Cola is bad. Coffee is bad, according to George Romney and the Mormons. Right? And they don't drink it. That's right. But Marietta sells a hell of a lot of it. After all my talk, let me say this, that I'm keenly aware of all these legal niceties. I'm keenly aware of the fact, probably, the Congress and the rest. But John, we need a signal to this country that we are hardline on crime. Other than the way, appointing a Rehnquist, that's what we are. That's a signal. The judges, people soon forget, and let's get some it'll be something wrong. So I know, well, it's a big, what that is controversy about. I want it discussed, and then, John, maybe after it's discussed, we'll decide not to do it, but we'll end up in between. It's a bargaining. Well, that's what Nelson Rockefeller is after. Sure, he's hypoed the problem. He's got everybody in New York State talking about it, John. And I want to hypo in terms of a situation where we get it hypoed and discussed, and maybe we'll come down to something else.
You know, narcotics in the district are not too bad now. I'm sure you know that, but our heroin traffic is quite far down. There's a little bit more cocaine. There's a lot more marijuana. But in terms of heroin, you really turn the thing around.
Of course, if you could get them off of heroin on marijuana, that'd be a good thing.
Well, this is
to get them on marijuana, they go to heroin.
This is one of the things that is
Heroin's hard to get. It's dangerous. You know, they have it. So marijuana is forced into treatment, and it's really a pretty good success story.
It is a good success story. Marijuana is way up, and I think part of it is what you say, that some of the users of heroin are using marijuana, and then there's a great deal of use by others, but frankly, it doesn't look like there's enough for anyone to run for office.
You see, on my marijuana point, John, I have no problem with the fact that there should be an evaluation of penalties on it, and there should not be these penalties that Texas they contribute for using. There are 10 years in jail for marijuana. That's wrong. In other words, the penalties should be commensurate with the crime. That I saw in the paper the other day. My father turned in his old. Oh, I did. And then after he said, I didn't realize the penalty was so they were in 30 years driving. The penalties are ridiculous. Yeah. That I think we could say, but I am not for legalization. I don't want to encourage the drug thing. We're starting to win the fight against drugs. This is not a time to let down the bars and to encourage, people to break over this threshold into the drug culture from the non-drug culture. But on the other hand, you see what I mean? It goes against what's that nice fellow, former governor, Shaver, Chairs Committee. But I'm going to stick it out there.
So there it is. You heard it right from the mouth of Nixon himself. Cannabis not particularly dangerous. And I just thought that was worth playing for you because it's different, as I would know, putting out audio here. And as you would know, listening to a podcast, it's different than reading an article. Hearing audio is different than reading words on a page, and seeing video is different than just hearing the audio. These mediums are different and they serve different purposes. And hearing the voice of then President Nixon say in his own words that it's not particularly dangerous really highlights the folly of this prohibition, really highlights how backwards it was or how politically motivated it was, and not really in an interest of serving people's best interests, serving their health, serving the culture. If people wanted to use cannabis, there's no reason they should not have been able to, other than people like Nixon who were using it to serve their own purposes. And it bothers me because we are still dealing with the fallout of that propaganda from Nixon's White House today. The stigma that exists around cannabis is directly a result of his not just drug policies, but comments to the public about how dangerous it was and all of the other stuff he said about cannabis. People still remember that. That bled into the public consciousness, and those connotations still exist today. So it's not harmless, and it's not just, politicians lie, this, that, or the other thing. These are an example of the real-world consequences of what these politicians say, and especially when they're the president of the United States, those words do have consequences. And I am very, very hopeful that we'll be able to move beyond the consequences of these and others relating to cannabis very, very soon. That's going to do it for me today. Really appreciate you listening. Be sure to leave a rating or review for the show if you liked what I did here. Leave a comment, send a text about anything we talked about today. Love to hear your opinions about cannabis. And hey, let me know if you got a suggestion for a brand or a product that you tried, you really, really liked, or you didn't like, and you want, it explored as to why this company is doing sketchy stuff. Send me an email, host@cannabismanpodcast.com, or reach out via social media. Check the the articles linked below. I always leave the ones I talked about during the show, and you can find those donation links I mentioned earlier in the episode there as well. I think we all need to pull together in these rough times and help each other, and I think donating to good causes and helping those who are dealing with extreme weather, which, by the way, we're all in store for more of that as the years ahead roll onward. But for now, thank you again for listening. Really appreciate the time that you spent, and be sure to tell your friends all about the Cannabis Man podcast. Have a great weekend. Be sure to hug those you love, and we'll talk next week. Bye-bye. Cannabis Man is 100% originally crafted by myself, Don Kleppen. Original theme music written and composed by Yusu Kim, aka Good Son.